side, I see the born, of no return. Sister, hey now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Oh, now see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening. It's Monday again. Monday, January 13th, 2014. You know, 2014, yeah, January's already halfway over. And that's what happens when you get a couple of holidays there back to back. You know, you lose so many days with the holidays. You know, we got to give up all those holidays and just work 7 days a week, right? You know, seems like half January is already gone. Got nothing accomplished. But in any case, I am Gary Hendershot. It's 8 o'clock in the evening here on the East Coast of the United States. I'm broadcasting live just 12 miles south of that den of iniquity, Washington, D.C. And tonight, for about the next hour or so, I'm going to be barking at the moon. Let's see if maybe anybody out there is listening. Ron Paul. How many of you out there sent him money, supported him, maybe even voted for him? I know I did. Not that I really thought he was a whole lot better than any of the others, but, you know, when you got pile of poo and a pile of caw, you decide which one stinks the least. And yeah, you know, this guy Ron Paul had a track record that seemed like he might head us in a slightly different direction than we've been heading. Over the years, doesn't seem to make a bit of difference whether we vote for a Democrat or a Republican. You know, when it comes right down to it, they seem to be taking us down the same path. Well, this guy, you know, he made the right kind of noises, actually made it sound like he might do something a little bit different. But, you know, he is a politician. And as a politician, he knows that the secret of running any sort of political campaign is to gather together piles of pretty pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on it. And one thing that Ron Paul has been very good at over the last few years, whether running for office or not, is fundraising. Well, you know, here's the latest fundraising catchphrases from Ron Paul. You may not know this, but for the past year, I was censored. Believe it or not, federal rules governing former members of Congress for their first year after retirement limited my ability to mobilize Americans to advance liberty. Every communication had to be carefully crafted and often even double-checked by C4L. That's his PAC, if you will, his Political Action Committee. CFL's lawyers to make sure I didn't violate federal law. But as of January 4th, the muzzle has been removed. Now, you know, if he'd have told you that last year, would you send him those shekels you sent him? But anyway, you know, chances are I'll ante up some more money for this guy and his campaign for liberty. Not because I really believe that they're going to be able to change things, but because, you know, the only vote we really seem to have anymore that gets counted is when we vote with our dollars. So I choose to deny Democrats and mainstream Republicans my financial support. And the pile of poo or caca that stinks the least, I reward with what little spare change I have laying around. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, frankly, each of you has to evaluate this situation and make up your own damn mind. But yeah, I'll probably ante up a few bucks for Ron Paul, whether I believe he's going to be able to change anything or not. That brings up a related issue, you know. A lot of you out there, frankly, I'm getting a little bit frustrated with you because you're sitting around on your ass waiting for Superman or Green Lantern to come swooping in and save you. I got news for you. That was a comic book, okay? Those guys don't really exist. If you're sitting around waiting for Gary to save you, or Jeff Rentz to save you, or God forbid Alex Jones to save you, you are going to be sorely disappointed. Take control of your own life. Find your issue. Believe me, there's plenty of them out there to choose from. You want me to run down the list? Okay. Sometimes it can get a little overwhelming. There are so many issues. We are being confronted from so many different directions that, frankly, you can easily just become comatose and not do anything. And I think that's what's going on with a lot of you. You're sitting around waiting for Superman or Green Lantern to swoop in and save you from the bad guy. He ain't coming. It's up to you. Pick your issue. Own it. Change it. Do something. Don't sit around waiting for somebody else to do it. If we all do that, it ain't gonna happen. Suppose you got arrested. Maybe you think, I ain't guilty of nothing. I have no idea why I'm being arrested, but like it or not, you're hauled down to the police station. They take your picture, they take your fingerprints, and they lock you up in the pokey. Maybe the next day, the magistrate or the justice of the peace or the sitting judge, whoever, looks at the charges and says, this is ridiculous, and they bounce you out and you're back on the street. Okay? No harm, no foul, right? I mean, it was maybe mistaken identity, maybe the cop just had a bad day. Who knows? Well, just suppose that in the process of being arrested and incarcerated, you also had the additional indignity of being charged a processing fee for your aggravations. So not only have they caused you the emotional harm of a false arrest, locked you up maybe in a drunk tank with a bunch of guys who smell like they couldn't find their way to the bathroom for the last week, the embarrassment of having to call the wife and say, hey, honey, could you get a few bucks together and bail me out of here? Not only do you have all those indignities to face, but now you're told that in addition to that humiliation, you have to pay $30 for the privilege of having gone through the experience. Does that sound like any ride at King's Dominion you've been on? Well, believe it or not, this happens in a county in Chicago. Here's an article from 2012. Downers Grove. It's in the village of Woodbridge. Okay, the village of Woodbridge is a wealthy and predominantly white Chicago suburb of 33,000. Okay, they charge arrested suspects a $30 booking fee, whether or not they're charged with any probable cause. Okay, so you get picked up for jaywalking and refuse to give the cop your ID. He gets pissed off and hauls you in. Okay, you're now under arrest. You have to give him your ID. You charge $30 for being booked. Even if that person is later released or found not guilty, there is no way to seek a refund of the money. Well, back in 2011, a guy named Bailiff sued in District Court of Chicago, alleging the $30 booking fee imposed on those arrested violated civil rights, due process clause. Under a negotiated settlement, village officials agreed to reimburse 980 people arrested from May 2009 through 2011, up to $15 each. So they're still going to keep $15 of the money. The attorney got $50,000 plus $1,500 in litigation costs. Bottom line is the attorney's made out, the attorney bringing this class action lawsuit made out like a bandit. The people who had this indignity imposed upon them will get half their money back if they can figure out what forms they have to file to make the claim. The interesting thing is these counties in Illinois have basically decided that, they're going to reinstate these charges. And when the lawsuits were brought, and there was more than one guy got his lawsuit bumped out of court because he was indeed he pled guilty to the charges. The guy named Markadonatos. I guess that's a Greek name. He was busted for some sort of theft, and he apparently pled to the charges and got a suspended sentence or some such thing. But he sued him too, and but they said he didn't have standing because even though it was an abridgment of constitutional guarantees, he was found guilty. So I guess the fee was considered fair and reasonable as long as you're found guilty or you cop a plea. Now, here's the problem with stuff like this. See, what it does is it gives these jurisdictions a financial incentive to just go around busting people for the hell of it. Now, we've already got a criminal justice system in the United States that finds it to its financial advantage to keep people incarcerated. Do you realize that a lot of the prisons that used to be operated by state municipal governments are now private operations that send the taxpayer a bill every month for keeping those prisoners incarcerated? They're paid by the bed. So, financial incentive for them is to bring as many people in. I mean, they're like days in, man. They're keeping a light on for you. Now, on top of that, just to get charged, just to get fingerprinted and get your picture taken and sign you into the pokey for the night, they're going to charge you $30. Now, when the financial incentive on the state is to run around busting people, you'd be looking like a source of revenue. Think about that one. Think about that. Now, in the second half of tonight's program, I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation. Now, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I get folks, call in that, totally off topic. Other times we actually have pretty interesting discussions when I invite some audience participation. So I'm going to give out the phone number. The phone number here is 877-342-6673. The issue that I would like folks to be prepared to discuss is this Edward Snowden guy. Now, I'm hearing arguments from two different camps. I'm hearing one group out there saying, this guy's the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's a Daniel Ellsberg-style whistleblower. He ought to get, medals instead of being sanctioned. That, this guy is the real definition of an American hero. I'm hearing this other camp, and frankly, they're people that I respect that are putting this argument on the table, that are saying, hey, this sounds like a put-up job. This guy Snowden, the whole thing kind of stinks. It might just be, layer upon layer of disinformation. And the fact that this guy is still walking around shows that, he's part of the plan, because frankly, if he was a real whistleblower or really threatened them in any way, he'd already be in the same situation as a Michael Hastings or a Breitbart or so many others who are no longer with us. I'd like to hear your point of view on that issue. Now, tonight, please don't call in, tell me about, problems with your cats and dogs and other issues, because, this is a timely issue. I'd really like to get more opinions on this matter out there than just mine. I'd like to hear what you think about it. Once again, that phone number is 877-342-6673. And right after the first break, which is coming up in about 4 minutes, I'll be happy to entertain callers, and we'll just see what you think about that issue. But now on to something else exciting. Right up near me, up in West Virginia. Yeah. West Virginia, American Water said it has been flushing the 1,700 miles of pipes affected by this Thursday of last week. They had a spill of a chemical, and frankly, this chemical's got one of these names that's, a mile long and got all kinds of oxyphils in it. I'm not sure I could even pronounce that properly with my southern accent. Bottom line is, it's a chemical that's used for washing coal. It is toxic in large doses. I mean, it's not like this stuff is good for you. You certainly don't want to be, consuming it by the glass, and it has no business being in the public water. But they did have a little spill of it, apparently a fairly large spill of it. About 1,000 gallons of this stuff got out of a 40,000-gallon tank along the Elk River in West Virginia. Now, about 15% of the population of West Virginia were impacted by this spill. Here's what this stuff, let me see if I can, methylcyclohexane methanol. Kind of sounds like what Grandpappy used to pull out of the still back in the good old days. That's what this stuff is called. They've been flushing the water system. Apparently today they started relaxing some of the restrictions. People in West Virginia have been basically warned not to use their tap water. So you got a bunch of people in West Virginia right now who are really, really smelly and are very, very thirsty, if not for supplies of fresh water that have been trucked in. Looks like they've got most of it cleaned up. They've got the water system there flushed out. Most of the affected areas are now able to drink their municipal water at this point, although some are still told not to bathe in that stuff and certainly not to drink it. Now, apparently, the chemical kind of smells like licorice, so I can guarantee it smells a heck of a lot better than what comes out of the tap here in Northern Virginia where I live. Stuff comes out of my tap smells like a swimming pool that about 37 5-year-olds just got out of. I mean, it really, my water stinks as it comes out of the tap. Water that smelled like licorice, I might find attractive. I mean, some of the chemicals they put in the stuff they send down the pipes to my home is probably more toxic than this chemical that they had spill. I'm not saying that this chemical spill was a good thing. Frankly, it's sad that so many people were inconvenienced. But when you stop and think about it, chances are your local municipality puts stuff in your water on purpose. that has a higher toxicity than what these folks in West Virginia were dealing with. Well, let's see here. It looks like I've got a caller on the line, but I also think we've got a commercial break coming up here in about 15 seconds. So I'm going to ask Doug to hold on until after the commercial break. But tonight, want to hear your opinion on this Edward Snowden Greenwald nonsense. The number is 877-342-6673, and we'll be back to talk about that right after the break. Now, how come I'm not hearing the bumper music? I could have sworn it was there. Now I hear the bumper music lighting up in the background. I tried to time that right. That's how things go, though. We'll be back right after these commercial messages. Tell you, if it wasn't for buttons, I'd hit them all right. Just before we dropped off for that break, had a caller come in. A fellow named Doug wants to express his opinion. Doug, you with me? I was hoping you weren't going to fall off the line, but I am hearing myself echo in the background. Can you mute me? All right, Doug. Let's give us your 2 cents, man. What's your point of view on this thing? Well, a lot of people were saying the same thing about this guy, Julian Assange, and the WikiLeaks thing. They say that was just, so very convenient, and it just popped right out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, here's all this dirt, and it did seem kind of like a controlled release. But, the problem is, some of us look for conspiracies under every rock, and sometimes we're handed a gift, and regardless of what the source is, the gift is of value. Now, have you heard of anything in the Snowden revelations that we didn't already know? I mean, I knew all along the NSA was reading my email, and what Snowden did is he brought us kind of an insider's point of view on it. He put names on the programs, basically fleshed it out to where now we've got some nasty details we didn't have before. But it's not like anything I've heard coming out of Snowden was really any sort of a revelation. How about with you? Have you heard of anything that was really, new information that you had never heard of before? Well, I've heard that, but it's kind of you hear a lot of stuff. It goes in one ear and out the other most of the time. But okay. So that being the case, you think Snowden is the Satanist sacrificial lamb, and he's here to confirm what we already knew, so that they can then move on to the next level of choking us. Well, yeah, Problem is, like I say, if we start looking for conspiracies under every rock, we're going to find stuff that, you know, could just be accidental. I don't know that you know, bottom line is I don't want to get into the fear porn aspects of some of this stuff. I mean, frankly, a lot of there's enough really scary stuff going on that we don't have to go beyond reality to find scary stuff. And I don't know. Everybody's got their point of view, and I certainly don't want to take an issue from you if that's the issue that you've chosen to do battle against. We all need to find our issue and find a way to get engaged in the fight, because you know, like I was saying earlier, Superman and Green Lantern ain't going to do it for us. So what issues have you taken on? Okay, is there anything we can do, or are you of the persuasion that because it's in the Bible, we're stuck with it, it's going to happen, and there's no way we can mitigate the problem, no way we can stop it, no way we can hold it off, we just got to, you know, suck it up and take it? So we have you, boy. I tell you, be honest with you, I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, and I certainly don't want to. I don't want to challenge your religious convictions, but I'm going to pray, sir, that you are wrong, because there's an awful lot in the Bible that just scares me to death, and I'm kind of hoping that you know, maybe we can find a. I don't take it as locked in stone prophecy. I take it as a warning, saying, hey, you know, if you don't shape up, this is how it's going to go down. And I keep praying that maybe we'll take it to heart, change our hearts, and find a way out of this mess. I mean, you're right, Fukushima is a bad thing. Again, I don't want to get into the fear porn aspect of it. Some people, I think, are making it sound a lot worse than it really is. The reality of how bad it is bad enough. We don't need to make it sound any worse than what it already is. Any other comments before I cut you loose and maybe make room for another caller? All right, sir. You have a good evening. Okay, I understand that I screwed up on the Justin TV feed and did not run his audio back out. You know, I did that on purpose because I was trying to mute the music coming back to the guys on the Justin TV's side, and in doing that, okay, blame that one on me. I pushed the wrong button. Any other people out there who have a point of view, who have something they would like to say on this Edward Snowden issue? That number again is 877-342-6673. I promise if I get another caller, I'll try to hit the right combination of buttons so that folks watching this on Justin TV and hearing it on YouTube later will actually be able to hear your comments. But now, moving on to yet another topical item for the evening. Suppose you spent billions of dollars on an aircraft carrier and then found that it was incapable of launching and retrieving your latest generation of fighter jets. Now, would you say, oops? Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel was warned last month that the U.S. Navy's new aircraft carrier, the most expensive warship ever built, is unlikely to meet its goal for handling aircraft. the USS Gerald Ford's sortie operation rate. Sortie operation rate. Now, it's Navy buzzword for how fast can we get airplanes on and off of this sucker. Is based on unrealistic assumptions. And key launching systems are currently suffering from development problems and have poor or unknown reliability. Oh, boy. Obviously, another war machine that was built by the lowest bidder. In any case, I'm hearing bumper music in the background, which I have strategically filtered out from the Justin TV feed, so I'm going to have to bow out of here and let the studio try to make a little bit of money here on some advertisements. So we'll get back with you in just a moment. Okay, and we're back from that break. Yeah, the USS Gerald Ford, most expensive warship ever built. Apparently can't land and launch aircraft as quickly as advertised. You know, we've had boondoggles. I remember the Bradley fighting vehicle. Remember that one? I don't know. You probably aren't old enough to remember that. You know, I remember that one. I remember that. You know, we were supposed to be able to send our troops into furious small arms firefights in this Bradley fighting vehicle and deploy a bunch of troops to a hot spot. You know, get them in there safely, get them back out again. You know, and they come to find out that the aluminum armor that thing was made out of. Quite literally burned when you hit it with the right kind of ammunition, which made it kind of a, you know, toaster smoker for our soldiers. And you know, after 10, 15 years, you know, they finally got it fixed. I remember that swing wing bomber when that thing first came out. God, what a boondoggle! It was a terrible airplane. What is it? The B.1 or I think it's a B.1 is what it's called. It's kind of a mainstay in our bomber fleet today. Took them a little while, you know, had some growing pains, and yeah, it cost, you know, 10 times as much as what they originally promised us. You know, it seems like, you know, they build these things, you know, they give it to their buddy to build it. He gets the big juicy contract, and then they have to pay for the thing 3 times over the next 10 years before it finally meets its stated objective. Another example of the military, industrial, financial complex at its best. We send our men off to shoot the bad guys with weapons that were designed and built by the lowest possible bidder. That said, luckily, our potential adversaries aren't doing a whole heck of a lot better. The Chinese have got what appears to be a cheap Chinese knockoff of our latest and greatest fighter jet, the F-22. I think they call it a Raptor or something like that. You know, this is their latest state-of-the-art fighter. You know, ours kind of works, it seems. At least it's not as bad as the F-35 that tends to stop feeding its pilot oxygen at critical moments and has problems with its tailhook assembly, catching the restraining wire on the deck of the aircraft carriers. You know, there's minor problems with the F-35. Apparently the F-22 is actually a pretty good fighter. And the Chinese liked it enough that they've got their own cheap Chinese knockoff. I mean, you got cheap Chinese Levi's, you got cheap Chinese iPhones and iPads, you know. Some of the cheap Chinese stuff in some ways is every bit as good as the original, because you know what? Chances are the Chinese built both. They produced the one that said Levi's on it. They did the ones that say Levi with a Chinese accent on the end of it, you know. And it's basically the same goods, but, you know, the Chinese brand is selling for substantially less. Well, it turns out that the Chinese variation of the F-22 has many of the problems of our F-35. It looks like when they stole the plans, they looked at the F-22, they looked at the F-35, and they said, let's take some of the best aspects of both. We'll make one plane that's, you know, got features of both. And apparently they did it as badly as we did, or worse. The Russians right now have their variation of what we called an F-15, which at this stage of the game is getting to be kind of dated. That is our frontline fighter, though. I mean, it's probably, you know, our air superiority fighter for the time being until they get this new F-22 and F-35 out there in adequate numbers. The Russians apparently took the design of the F-15, improved upon it, and some of those in the know say that's one of the most advanced fighter planes in the world right now. Certainly up to a challenge, anything else that anybody's got. Now, one of the interesting things about this new air superiority fighter that the U.S. is betting the farm on, this F-35 gizmo, now this thing is supposed to be able to take on 15 targets. Okay, so you got one American fighter should be able to take on 15 opposing fighters. The problem is the one U.S. fighter cost as much as 100 of the opposing fighters. So all the bad guys gotta do is mass 100 to your one. You see where I'm going with this argument? Back during World War II, the Germans arguably had far superior quality in their weapons systems. The reason the United States and its allies were able to overcome this superior German technology is because we overwhelmed them with mass quantities of relatively inexpensive competing armaments. Now, yeah, this German tank might be able to engage 4 or 5 U.S. tanks, survive, and be victorious. American generals knew that, and whenever they went up against a German tank, they sent 10 of ours in against one of theirs to ensure victory. As the 21st century progresses, I would like to think that the United States would mend its bellicose ways and not be engaged in making so much trouble for the rest of the world. I mean, frankly, one of the few things we export these days is death and destruction. It would be real nice, I think, if the United States kind of went back to Teddy Roosevelt days where we walked softly but carried a big stick. Don't go looking for trouble, but if it finds you, be ready to handle it. And if that means not having the greatest and most glamorous and sexiest fighting machines in the world, but having superior quantities of capable equipment, and maybe in the long run, us poor taxpayers would get more bang for our buck. Nobody seems to have any respect for your money. course, they figure it's their money anyway. How ready would you be if the power went out tomorrow? Any idea? I know at least one fella in my chat room. I'm monitoring 2 different chat rooms right now, so it's it's hard for me to pay attention to both. But I know one guy in my chat room that he did a YouTube video on how he survived the blackout. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. How ready? I mean, we take it for granted. You come home from a hard day's work, you flip a switch, let there be light. You reach into the freezer that's been running all day to keep that microwave meal frozen for you. You pop it in the microwave oven, you push a button, 10, 15 minutes later, you're eating dinner. Yeah, that is the modern lifestyle. You can argue whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Okay, that argument's for another day. The fact of the matter is, a lot of folks depend on that lifestyle. They got a cold beer in the fridge. There's deli meats in the fridge. There's bread. Just make yourself a sandwich, grab a beer, sit down, watch some TV. Right? You've worked a hard day. You figure you're entitled to a little relaxation. We take that electricity so much for granted. Folks in Japan took electricity for granted too, up until Fukushima showed them the evils of electricity generated by nuclear energy. And that's really where I'd like to finish up tonight. Fukushima is bad news, okay? There are some serious global implications for what went down in Fukushima. Now, I don't want to get off into a fear porn session and tell you that, you're all going to glow in the dark and that, you need to have radiation suits and all that, I will say this. I dearly love salmon, and I'm giving that up. There's a lot of seafood from the West Coast that I think I'm probably going to avoid. Folks who live on the West Coast, I think a good Geiger counter costs about $400. You might want to start saving your money. If you live near the coastline on the West Coast of the United States, time to start thinking about getting yourself a Geiger counter. Now, does that mean that whenever you go into the produce section, you're going to have your Geiger counter with you? I don't know. I will say this. If you've got a Geiger counter and you happen to frequent the beaches along the West Coast, take some readings, get some good notes, take some video, because I tell you, our government, our EPA that will bust and fine a farmer for driving his pickup truck on a dusty road and raising a dust cloud, will not do anything about the potential implications of what's coming at us from Japan. Well, I hear the bumper music in the background. I have run out of time, so you can betcha I'll be back next week to do some more barking at the moon. Y'all have a good evening now. Good night.
Calling out to you, won't you turn, won't you turn? ahead now.